Hey guys, it's your boy Valdo. And I'm here to kind of give you guys my final review of Cold Snap and tell you how I guess it being my first build, how it went. So generally, the best part about it was I did this. And it's my first time doing it. I completed everything on the Atlas. Now, there is a bit of cheese to it, and unfortunately, I do have to say Cold Snap is currently bugged. The damage over time effect doesn't look like it's being removed from the enemies when you apply it, causing weird bugs like killing Malachi while he's not appearing, or, of course, Shaper dying while he is supposed to be invulnerable. And yeah, that felt kind of bad considering like that was my first time killing Shaper, but hopefully it's not my only time. But besides that, I did everything else pretty fair and square. I mean, none of the bosses were terribly difficult, and a new addition to sorry guys, a new addition to my setup is going to potentially make this incoming nerf, I guess you could say, when they do remove this bug, not too existent. And so what that changes is Val Righteous Fire. With Val Righteous Fire, you gain a 38% more damage multiplier to your Cold Snap Val Cold Snap. Um, and so what that means is you pop that before you go in, and of course that's going to give you a significant damage boost on top of your Elemental Overload and your Frostbomb cold damage resistance reduction. And so, but generally, that's just hopefully what's going to help us patch that part of the build. And it is kind of one of the only nuances here that I've shown you today. But then we're going to talk about the mechanics of Cold Snap and I guess what most players might be seeing moving forward. Um, in the particular build that I've been playing up until this point, we've been using Spell Cascade. Spell Cascade does one thing that increased AoE doesn't do, and that is it applies on-hit effects for every cold snap that occurs. So, for example, I hit with three, anything can get overlapped by all. If it hits by one, it gets by one. It can hit by two or three. So you can actually hit with all of them with enough AoE, which I believe if the monster is big enough, we can do it. But most of the time, you want to be aiming to hit two. Um, but that's only the on-hit effect. The part of it, the build that we scale, does not get affected by this whatsoever. So you would normally want to actually run increased area, which has pretty similar AoE. It's pretty much the same. Like the small areas that are wider outdoes the very slight more length that you're seeing here. And if you want, you can, pause that to see this, see if it's legit. But yeah, I mean, I guess the big point is that you have options. You don't want to use it, you can use Spell Cascade for a good reason. But I will say, Spell Cascade feels better, and it feels quite a bit stronger. Now, how do we adapt to another big change is, if say our damage is actually quite low, we're going to be switching off Spell Cascade into Elemental Focus, sending our damage into another dimension, which is quite cool. So just letting you guys know, LE Focus for your 6 link when you are going for single target, Val Righteous Fire for your single target, and you should be able to kill pretty much everything in the game. But I honestly don't have the ability to show you guys or guarantee that until they've removed the effect, or the bug per se. And I guess the big bug that I'm talking about is Val Cold Snap and Cold Snap's damage over time effects are not being removed when their skill effect duration ends, causing bosses to die like Malachi when he is transitioning or coming out of the ground when he should be immortal. And also enemies like the Shaper, who also should be immune during their, I guess, speeches, and they just die, which is kind of horrible. So yeah, that kind of sucks. But the what we run here is Cold Snap, Hypothermia, Efficacy, Control, Destruction, Swift Affliction, and the choice slot here for Ink AoE, Spell Cascade, and Ellie Focus. Now we're going to talk about the mechanic of freezing, which is actually optional in this build. You do not have to do this. In fact, I'm going to say that moving forward, it is likely better for you to invest in anything but freezing. Freezing is a powerful mechanic that allows you to freeze mobs before they come at you. And mobs can be dangerous in general for builds like this. We have a good defensive mechanic in phase acrobatics, mind over matter, and of course a shit ton of life and energy shield. Um, but sometimes freezing mobs can be very beneficial, and I think I owe a lot to freezing in this build. But moving forward, it might be possible to drop it in exchange for more cold damage. So, for example, although this one significantly scales the on-hit damage of Cold Snap, I think taking like two Opal Rings here and taking the Halcyon out, which also does give us more damage if we freeze, for just a basic amulet that scales cold damage, we might be in a more consistent, higher health pool, higher mana pool, um, slightly more damage over time position. And that might be the case, and I'm not entirely sure. I'm just kind of shooting that out there. But as of right now, the way the build stands and the way that I built it, it is actually based on freezing. And so we only switch to Ellie Focus, which I never really do, for single target, and we take the freeze nodes here. And of course, if you were to move forward with this build and not take these nodes, you can instead take these. But the increased effective chill is quite powerful, so it may not be a good idea to do that. I'm just kind of giving options here. Considering you will freeze even if you have Ellie Focus, guys. Just a heads up, you will freeze without Ellie Focus. But generally, I like the Breath of Rhyme here, just to get that chill and the freeze. And the chill and the freeze you get from Desalio's Sign, which is another 10%. Here another 10%. Our Blasphemy, I think, is 14% from... Here it is, Frostbite. Yeah. And then that's called comes down to like 74-ish chance to freeze. Let me check it. We get enough chance to freeze, 75% chance to freeze. But we generally freeze everything, so it's not like it really matters. If you want, you can actually run Elemental Proliferation, which I did attempt to use, which is kind of cool. Elemental Prolif allows you to freeze the entire screen, especially if you're going to be switching to one of these Cold Snaps instead of Spell Cascade. That's also an option. So guys, there's a lot of options for this build that I've tried that I didn't end up being in the final build, but because of the changes we'll be seeing moving forward, can be options. So um, I guess I'm sorry for not being too direct in what I'm telling you guys what to do, but that's because there's so much more that you can attempt with the build. And although I've tested it myself, I just ended up running this stuff. So it is a lot of it is preference. Um, and I guess to kind of move forward, our obvious assist moves are Ellie weakness with increased critical strikes, curse on hit, orb of storms. Pretty basic shit. It's gonna give us the Ellie weakness and the elemental overload, and if we are in elemental equilibrium, which is another thing we're going to talk about, um, this would be quite good for that because it would switch them to lightning while they are dying to the damage over time from our cold snap degen. So elemental overload, why not? Or elemental equilibrium, why not? Well, in this particular situation, our on-hit damage is very high. And by high, I mean that our on-hit damage makes up for about... Might as well pull up Path of Building. Our on-hit damage from Cold Step. Let me make sure everything is on. Yeah, we're good. Yep. Okay. The on-hit damage for Val Cold Snap, or for basic Cold Snap, is... Oh, sorry guys. Let's turn this off and turn on Ellie Focus, just to be in the right spot. Cool. The big change here, the reason Val Righteous Fire, is going to be that the on-hit damage for Cold Snap is about 270,000 damage per second, which is pretty good when we are, because you're gonna pop Val Righteous Fire, pop Val Cold Snap, and then you're gonna start smacking them like endlessly with your hits. 270,000 damage is going to be lost um, because you'll be on hitting them so much. And so, for example, it'll look like this, and we'll ignore our initial hit and hit with lightning. And so ignore the total DPS for the hit attack. It is actually not correct. If you are focusing on this build, on the degen for the build, it is an option to take Elemental Equilibrium, but then you're not really going to be casting Cold Snap again, which is a big damage loss. So in my opinion, Elemental Equilibrium is an option, but it's not a big deal. And I don't think it's something that we should really focus on. But our damage is quite high. Um, so yeah, let me take that off really quick. Okay. And then I guess to move on, we have The Immortal Call, cast when damage taken, increased duration. I just removed it and I moved it over here. You should just have to. Um, Obvious stuff. And then efficacy, righteous fire, increased duration for the big burning AoE and more spell damage. Efficacy, this actually scales heavily with our build. Run through mobs with it while you have your Val Cold Snap on, and then like boom, clear speed. Herald device, and that's the last thing. So this is actually optional with the build now because if you decide to go the freezing route, take it for the sexual orgasmic Herald device explosions. If you're not, then just don't take it. It's obviously not going to do much. It's only an on-hit spell, and that's it. So yeah, it's totally optional. And then shield charge and fortify and whatever. Okay. And then frostbite, spell cascade, frost bomb, arcane surge. Arcane surge is at level 7 with this particular setup, and it allows you to gain arcade surge and the frost bomb. Nothing else. And that's kind of it in terms of the skills. Now, as far as gear goes, let me talk about Terran's Shiver really quick. So it's another item that a lot of players have talked about when it comes to Cold Snap. I'm just gonna say this right now, Terran Shiver is garbage. Um, please do not use it. Uh, it does allow you to get 20% more damage on enemies that are frozen, but I don't find it to be very powerful. It has less damage and it disables your ability to use a shield. Um, and the 20% more damage is going to, in my opinion, not be relevant against most bosses, since most bosses cannot be frozen fully, at least not long enough for your next hit to take more damage. So you'd have to be perma-freezing enemies, and I've tried to get 100% freeze, and it doesn't feel good. So I'm just going to advise against Terran Shiver. It's inconsistent, doesn't allow you to use a shield, and it just kind of really it just doesn't do much for you. And the +2 to cold gems is okay. It doesn't make a much of a difference. But yeah. And so talking about curses. So the alternative to the class is the occultist. If you go occultist, your single target goes up. But your clear speed goes down because of the cast speed and the rotation is going to take a lot longer. And you might even have to cut out a spell. I personally don't feel like this is the best way to go about it, but you'll have a slightly more AoE bonus because of the forbidden power. And you'll also be switching from expending frenzy charges to power charges. Um, Sorry, and that's pretty much it. I mean, honestly, it's a good idea. It's not too bad. It definitely works, and you'll have no limit to how much you can cast on the enemy when it comes to your power charges. But it's not a big deal. Um, and I guess ultimately, guys, that's it. I guess to explain my experience, the build starts off kind of slow. I actually used freezing pulse for a long time, up until I would say when I was around like level, I think around like Act 6, right after Act 6. Or no, I'm sorry. I think I started using it around Act 5. Yeah. Act 5 because I remember having to start using or I used it to kill Malachi, but I dropped it just for a quick moment because the clear speed wasn't up there. But once you get enough freeze chance and once you have enough like cold damage, it becomes quite powerful. And I was using freezing pulse for a while. I'm just gonna recommend, guys, you need a scepter like these. These are insane. They are some of the new ones, and you can also get a really low level scepter that's super cheap. I've seen like scepters with like the same spell and cold damage and LE damage, so it's saying like 100%, spell damage essentially for like level 6 characters or level 10 characters. Get one of those to start the build off and you'll be fine. It'll be fun. It'll be a great time. But you're gonna need one of those until you get one of these. Um, but yeah, I mean, as far as leveling goes, guys, get that 1C scepter. Um, and just go at it. You don't really need much else. Use freezing pulse until you feel comfortable with cold snap. Get that spell cascade on. Run a tabula rasa. Like there really isn't anything crazy to it. It's an excellent lead starter because it's cheap. It doesn't cost you really much to get started. And degeneration effects are normally quite powerful for league starters for the obvious reason of damage scaling being less expensive. Um, so yeah, I mean, honestly, guys, there really isn't much else to it. If you guys do have any more questions, let me know. But I'm gonna be moving on. I'm actually gonna show you guys what I am moving on to. Let's Now, before we get started here, I want to talk about um, a couple of things, and that this is not the one I'm guaranteed moving on to. It's just the one I had very high level, or at least I put a little bit of time into this one. This one's incinerate. Um, so yeah, it's not exactly a very different incinerate. But it melts everything. Incinerate's fucking ridiculous. It kills everything like instantly. I haven't fought anything yet in the game that didn't just die to one puff. Um, but I guess the three of them are let me just pull up the path of building. I know I keep doing this, guys, but here we go. So this is an incinerate build that prioritizes cast speed. So this is a cast speed build. Welcome, I know Trickster. Nothing really different there. But this build achieves 13.2 casts a second with Incinerate, and it uses Trickster. Now, we use Harness the Void for the obvious, like, you're really rolling the die with this one, and so you really have a high chance to hit those high numbers. And so that's what Harness the Void is here for. The rest of the stuff is quality of life. We do use Ignite Prolift for clear speed, but then just drop it for the single target raw damage. To show the 6 link, we have Incinerate, Control, Destruction, Combustion, Immolate, Arcane Surge, Fire Pen. Um, Arcane Surge is an actual link for this build because it gives you more cast speed, and it's kind of one of the best more damage multipliers for the skill. We don't use Elemental Focus though because we need the Ignites, but if I'm not mistaken, it is not as good as Immolate is when you are igniting, so I'm okay with not running it. Um, we achieve 1.3 million damage with this build, which is not bad. And we achieve max stacks. 10 stacks is maximum stacks. We'll get, of course, 10 casts in about 0.7 seconds. So within 0.7 seconds, you will be at maximum stacks. If you want to see, like, if you want to get an idea of that, if you look at what I'm doing now, um, in the very top left corner, it takes that long to achieve the 8 stacks. Oh, it's only 8 stacks. I'm sorry. Um, Let me explain that. So there's 8 stacks, right? But there's an item you can get, a lab enchant that gives you more stacks. It gives you up to tens. It's just kind of a crazy mechanic. Here it is. +2 to maximum stages, which is fucking wild. Because the stages don't just give you like a massive more damage multiplier, it gives you area too. So that's pretty cool, and it also would make your ignites a lot stronger. We'd be able to achieve all those stacks at a very high level, or at a very quick cast speed, and I think that's pretty interesting. So actually, the real, I guess, difference with this build is how much cast speed we're stacking. And well, I guess I should just show you guys this. The other big difference is this is a self-ignite build. So we're going to be using the Eye of Innocence with Moku's Embrace to give us even more cast speed. This one's corrupted kind of fancily. And a Razor the Seventh Sun, which is may or may not make it to the final build, to essentially recover a ton of life, combined with Eye of Innocence to leech a shit ton of life. So I guess what's obvious here is that I'm trying to achieve a ton of life leech and um well, pseudo life leech, which is the recover 1%, very quickly, and using a ton of cast speed, and then using this sexual scepter of honor, which I'll be using, and of course a Maokon again for the free onslaught and dodge chance, and of course this. So really fancy stuff coming, guys. I'm really developing on this build, but the other two options, and you guys can give me feedback on this one. I'll probably do like a little like YouTube poll thing to let you do. But it's this. If you guys want to see this instead, we might go with that. And that is two versions, a Trickster and an Elementalist for Burning Arrow. I'm just gonna say this first. The Elementalist version is fucking nuts. You can get like 700k, if not more, um, Burning Arrow ignites because you can get 2 ignites. But I'm not going to go too deep into this. So Burning Arrow and then FlameBlast, which I don't have a tree for right now. So yeah, guys, let me know how you feel about it. I'm really sorry the bug happened, and it kind of sucks. But if anything, moving forward, we're going to be trying out different interesting stuff, really testing out some of GGG's changes, and yeah, that's kind of the idea. So let me know how you feel about that, guys. Have fun with it. And again, any questions, don't be afraid to let me know. Have fun.